Thank you. So your wonderful coach asked me to stop in and give my 2 cents and advice on buyer consultation. So this is a topic that I love because I think the buyer consultation is absolutely probably one of the most important things that you're going to have, and you need to master for a variety of different reasons with the client. So I want to customize this really for you guys. I have some tips and tricks and things that we're going to discuss, but I would love some engagement and feedback and what have you. So you guys all know how to use Zoom, right? You guys have the show of hands. By show of hands, how many people have already done a buyer consultation, even if it's a long time ago or if it was briefly or anything like that? How many people have done one? Julie, awesome. Gerald, Dawson, Malin, Rocco, Jackie. Hey, Jackie. Robert, cool.
I don't know how to do the hand, but my hand is up.
You're got it. Rosa's virtual hand is up. Cool, Sam. Perfect. And those of you who have done it, why don't you chime in? I'd love to hear how it went. Did you think that it went well? Did you think that it could be better? And there, Rosa found it. Do you think it could have gone better? Let me hear from you guys. Anyone? Don't make me voluntold people.
I'll speak to it.
Julie, thank you.
The ones I've done have been with someone else on my team, but I did a couple solo ones recently. It went really well. Okay. Definitely, I think room for improvement in terms of, for me personally, kind of allowing more opportunities for the other side to kind of speak and engage, so they feel like I'm listening to them more rather than talking to them. But I did find that it helped a lot in the transaction in terms of kind of heading off future questions and making them feel more comfortable throughout the buying journey.
That's great. That's absolutely some of the purpose for a buyer consultation. I'm going to call on someone here, Rosa, because I know your experience. And Rosa, by the way, comes to us by way of California. She worked on a very large team in California, a successful team, so successful enough that your team is part of Gary Keller's private group, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. That's a huge mega team, which is great. Rosa, how was you've had a number of them, but how was your buyer consultations when you're on that team in Northern California?
They're great. I still do buyer consultations with California and Hawaii, but basically, the structure is getting information from the client before you actually sit down and have a consultation. So we always send a questionnaire, and the client doesn't have to fill out the whole thing, but just something for us to talk about, to base things off of. And so we find out what their likes, dislikes are, must-haves in a property, nice-to-haves, and if they've been pre-approved or not. And if they haven't, we talk to them as much as we can as realtors about the pre-approval process. And then at the end of the meeting, make sure we send an email out connecting them with our list of go-to lenders, we'll do an introduction email with lenders that we think they'd be a good match with. And then of course, during the meeting, we give them basically a rundown on how the process goes from beginning to end. It's a lot of information, but it's like bullet point style, and we let them ask questions throughout the meeting. Usually the consultation will last anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, that sounds just right. Hiroko, I know you had your hand up earlier. How was your buyer consultation when you did it? What's some highlights on the ones that you've done?
It did not go well. As Rosa was saying, I was expecting at least 30-45 minutes, but I am currently working with this client, but she's in a rush. So I wanted to really slow her down. And I think that's what I learned from Chad, yourself, and also Lisa. When client doesn't try to listen to you, that's the thing. They would all of a sudden panic during the transaction. So I'm still trying to slow down each section, each step, what's gonna happen. We're not under contract yet, but even she kind of refused to sit down. So I do a lot of try to get a little short meeting during the showings. It didn't go well as I expected, but now she gradually understanding what needs to be done, what needs to be understood before we even jump on the contract. So I try to talk with them over the phone. It's getting longer and longer, and she's getting more questions. So I almost wanted to say, that's why we should have had a coffee together, but it didn't go as well as I expected. But now we speak over the phone over like, maybe almost every day, 30 minutes. She's getting a lot of questions, and that's when I want to avoid with next buyer. Like I really have a certain time to do proper consultation. I'm doing like pieces right now. So
out of curiosity, is this one a first-time home buyer?
yes.
So, in my opinion, one of the main, well, there's a few reasons, but one of the main reasons to do a buyer consultation is to really, you're interviewing each other. It's going both directions. So while you're trying to earn their business, you're also trying to see, do I even want to work with this person? Is this person, and there's a lot of reasons why you may or may not. They could be a little bit too difficult. They could be a little bit risky. They could be a certain demographic of buyer. What I mean by that is like maybe out of your element. They're only looking for commercial or industrial. That's a different demographic that you maybe have no knowledge or experience in. Maybe they're investors. Investors also. Hiroko, you work with Kina, right? So yes. Kina specializes in investors, and investors are tricky because investors, a lot of them, and there's some that are very experienced and there's some that are brand new off of a seminar circuit and they don't know anything. They don't even have their own home for that matter. And what their goal is to write contracts that are heavily undervalued. So, because they have a certain mathematical equation, they need to be at anywhere between like 50 to 60% loan to value. And so what they're going to do is find a real estate agent, not just one, but usually a multiple, and say, write me offers on 20 or 30 different offers, all of which are 50 to 60% loan to value, which means that it's heavily under what the asking price is. And so, if you don't know what you're doing, that can be stressful, right? So there's a lot of reasons why when you sit down with a client, you want to see, do I even want to work with this individual? Is this going to be worth my time? Is it going to be worth my energy and so forth? But the other part of it too is, and I think Hiroko mentioned this, Rosa definitely mentioned this, Julie mentioned this as well. It's creating the proper expectation. And there's something that I oftentimes refer to, and Carrie's heard me say this many times before in the past, is client management is really, really important. If you don't set the right expectation up front and you don't tell them what's going to be happening in terms of the market, in terms of the process, they're going to beat you up. And then you get the clients that are calling you nonstop at all hours of the day, all hours of the night. They don't have any concept of what the norm is. So it's your job to explain what the norm is, and also explain what your expectations are, what you're going to deliver to them. It's basically your promise that you're delivering that to them. And then you can, go forward from there. So I have a couple of notes. We're going to go over and break some of this down, and then we're going to talk and get some Q&A stuff. But before I go too far into these notes, is there anything in particular that someone is hoping to get from their buyer consultation or improve on their current buyer consultation that they want to mention or ask or anything like that? Rosa? Yeah.
I'm still not quite familiar on, like said, the bullet points that I say that I run through with my buyer consultations in Hawaii. I'm sure they're very similar to California, but if there is a way that maybe you can do like basically from beginning to end of the process of being in, like let's say once the buyer gets into contract, what should they expect? I know that there's different contingencies and stuff here, mm-hmm. but things are done slightly differently here. And I'm working with a buyer now, and I've got him set up with the pre-approval and everything. We're going out to showings, but once he gets into contract, I don't know honestly what to expect. So
yeah, I can absolutely. There's a couple of in fact, Stephanie, if you can, on behind the scenes, could you ask Jewel to pull up? I have a contingency. It's a roadmap. It's a contingency roadmap. That's just a one sheet that I want to share with them, find that for me and pull that up, and I can talk on that. And then also have Jewel find for me my buyer consultation link, and just email that to me and let me know when it's there, and then I'll pull it up and share my screen. So in the buyer consultation, here's a couple of things, right? So here's a couple of what not to do. This is really, really important, what not to do. Number one is first of all, don't skip a buyer consultation. I see this with agents, especially newer agents, so much where they kind of blaze right past it because they're so excited. And I get it. You're like, let's just say you're at an open house and you meet someone and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to see, the next property. Like, oh my God, yeah, let's go. Like, what are you doing right now? Let's just hop in the car and then let's just do this thing. So before I came back home to Hawaii, I was in Arizona, and I used to run a Century 21 office, and it was in a resort heavy area. So resort heavy areas, basically there's a lot of people that are on vacation that just pop in. And when they're on vacation, they just want to see anything, right? So they come in and they're in sandals, and it was Lake Havasu, Arizona. So they're all in board shorts and sandals, and they're super excited. And they're like, oh my God, how much are the homes here? 200,000. That's amazing. Yeah, listen, I got like 3 hours break before my next, let's go look at homes. And the agents would just, before almost even asking what their names are already in the car, driving around town, showing properties to people. And the reason why that's bad, first of all, that's a safety issue. You got to know who you're getting in the car with. That's number one, especially for you ladies. Number two is these agents would come back into the office and be so upset. I mean, literally it happened almost every single time. They would get back in the office and go, I can't believe I just showed this guy, 10 or 12 different properties. And then he tells me he's not even interested. I'm like, yeah, because you didn't ask the question. Like you have to sit down. It seems counterintuitive. It seems like, if we look at ourselves as being salespeople and someone is motivated coming in the door going, I want to buy, it seems counterintuitive to go, hold on, slow down. Let's stop your momentum. Let's sit down and have a conversation. It seems like that's not what you want to do, but you have to do that because you got to understand what it is that they want, what they're looking for, especially if in our market, especially what if somebody comes in and they don't even qualify? The last thing that you want to be doing is spending, 5 days, 6 days a week, whatever it is, showing properties that they don't qualify for. So that's super, super important. The other thing is make sure not to do kind of a rushed consultation. I can wet people, and I think Carrie's been with me before. I do a decent job at wetting people's palate and getting them interested at an open house, but not giving the goods away. I'm kind of building it up to getting to a consultation. What you don't want to do is do an abbreviated consultation, because then you're selling yourself short. Think of yourselves, which you guys are, think of yourselves as professionals like physicians or attorneys. They're not going to do, a half-ass version of a consultation. That's not what they do. They're professionals. And you guys are professionals as well. So don't do that. Like, don't skip that. I don't even skip that for my friends and family. I helped my aunt buy a property just a couple of years ago. And this is my aunt, and my favorite aunt, who's basically like a mom to me. She helped raise me. She changed my diaper. Like it's my aunt. And I'm always joking with her and playing with her and, whatever. And we sit down and because we're serious now. She's gotten pre-approved and I got everything all worked out. And we sit down. I said, hey, before you look at properties, I got to sit down and discuss the market with you. Within 15 minutes of me going into my buyer consultation, she literally was like, I have no idea who I'm talking to right now. Like, who are you? Because she expected her like nephew, who's always jovial and playing around. And I'm like, no, I owe it to everyone to be consistent with what I'm doing, whether it's my aunt, my brother, someone I've never met. My consultations are exactly the same, because if you skip, I've made this mistake before. If you skip something, it'll come back to bite you. I promise you. It'll come back to bite you later. Another tip is not to make it about you. This is not about you. I've sat in on consultations, whether it's a listing presentation or a buyer consultation in this case, and the real estate agent, we're in a very ego-driven industry. So oftentimes the real estate agent makes it about them. Oh my gosh, I am the greatest. So here's what I'm going to do. And I've won this award and I've done this and I've traveled here and the buyer's not there for that. It's nice to know who they're working with, but I highly recommend, and we'll kind of talk about this in a little bit too, to work on your elevator pitch. Make it no more. It cannot be more than 60 seconds, if that, maybe 90 seconds. And that's it. Like because you want to let them know who you are and the company that you're working with is a legitimate company and you're doing good things and what have you. But that is it. The rest of the consultation absolutely has to be about them. I think that's oftentimes what's wrong with our industry is we're consultants, and what do consultants do? They're supposed to listen so they can properly consult. And oftentimes I think the listening part goes sideways. Other thing you want to make sure that you don't do is don't do a consult over the phone. Coincidentally, so even though I run the firm, I'm not practicing anymore. I don't want to ever compete with our agents, but I have a lot of clients and a lot of referrals. I just did a buyer serendipitous. I did a buyer consultation this morning. Someone called me and said, I have a friend, and I said, oh, perfect. I have to do a whole talk on buyer consultation. So I did one this morning via Zoom. So and the clients are in North Carolina. So never do it on the phone. Try to do it in person if possible. Zoom is fine. It's like the next best thing to be in person. In person is better, but don't do it over the phone, because you over the phone it's missing a lot of stuff, missing a lot of substance. You can't see their facial expressions. You can't see body language. You can also, you ever hear, especially if it's a husband and wife, you can hear them talking or whispering questions back and forth, and you're not part of that thing, and you're like, wait, are they not vibing this? Did they have it's a whole thing. So you kind of want to be, all on the same page. If it is a couple, whether it's boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever it is, you absolutely want all parties present at the same time for sure. That's just out of respect. And you want to make sure everyone's included. And also you don't want to do two buyer consultations if you don't have to. You did one for one spouse, and then the other spouse says, hey, I'm left out. I didn't get anything out of that. And you got to do it all over again. So find whatever literally today, start writing out your little elevator pitch. And mine is simple. This is literally what I say. I'll basically say a little bit of a background about me, and more importantly, then we're going to focus on you and talk more about you. But just so you know who you're working with, my background is I've been doing this for 21 years. I have 18 licenses in 15 different states. I'm a licensed mortgage banker and mortgage and real estate broker in a number of states. And I keep my mortgage banker's license active, not because I want to do a loan, but just so I can properly advocate on your behalf if you have any questions with regards to finance. But I'm here to help you. Keller Williams is the company I work for. Keller Williams is the #1 real estate firm on the planet. So we have tons of resources, tools, and technology, which I'll get further into, that can help make your search super easy. And you got a ton of support. I work with a team, and there's a variety of different team members that can help you with different aspects. But more importantly, let's switch over to what you're looking for. That's literally the pitch. So whatever it is that you want to get across, just boil it down. Boil it down. No, you don't need to talk about your journey as a real estate agent and all the things that you did before. If it comes out organically and naturally, for sure, but it's not about you. It's about them. They're the hero of the story. Always make sure that they remain the hero of the story. One of the other things that I'll often do as well is I'll kind of plant a seed so that it keeps them engaged, because not everyone wants to. There's times where I'll be in a buyer consultation or a listing presentation for that matter, and people kind of check out. You can kind of see it, right? So one thing that I do to try to, and as a psychological thing, I'll let them know that, hey, I'm really passionate about helping clients find the right property. I come from an education perspective on how I go through everything. I'm going to teach you a bunch of different things. It's going to seem like you've taken a real estate class by the end of this. And by the end of it, I'm going to show you how I'm able to be an expert in this market, as well as being an expert negotiator. So you'll find out at the end of this. I say that on purpose because it's like a movie. I'm trying to keep them hooked in so they're paying attention to what we're going to be talking about, right? And so Rosa, you can go, you kind of mentioned this in terms of the order of things. You can go in a number of different orders, whatever seems best for you guys. But there's a couple of things. This is what I do. I would change it to be organic and fit right for you, but don't be overly creative. Like master someone's process. And then afterwards, you can kind of be creative and change it a little bit further. So your bio is what I would start with, who you are, the company you work with, keep that short. I would then go into the market update. And this is where in my opinion, where you have an opportunity to shine. Because as a real estate licensee, you should be an expert in your local market. And you guys have heard me say this before, some of you have, is in my opinion, our industry and our state does us a disservice in that they call us real estate salespeople. I don't think that we're salespeople. I think there's salesmanship involved in the process, but there's salesmanship involved in anything, right? If you are an office administrator, there's salesmanship involved in that. I think the salesmanship portion accounts for 15% of what we do. 85% of what we do is being a consultant, an advocate, a market expert, all these other kind of things. So there are, and I'm sure you guys have met people in our industry or any other industry too, especially ours, that that might be flip-flop with a lot of people. They're 15% consultant and 85% salesperson. Those people will end up getting sued and fined and lose their license or get in all kinds of trouble, because you can't sell your way out of certain things. Like, we have to advocate for our clients and look out for their best interest. So knowing that is really important. And part of that, where you guys are licensees, that's not to be taken lightly. You have to be professionals and have to constantly feed into your area, your expertise. And part of that is being an expert in the market. It's not that difficult to do. So some of the things that I explain to them, and this is how you're going to earn your value and earn their trust, is you're going to be talking about things like the sales price to list price ratio in certain areas. And how that's going to come into play is once you move on to their wants and needs, the area they're looking to purchase, you can now assign what you just educated them on, which is a sales price to list price ratios and average days on market and these kind of market indicators. You can tie that into the specific communities or neighborhoods that they're looking to purchase in. So just for instance, if I'm talking about market conditions and I'm saying, so here's what sales price to list price ratio is, and I'm explaining to them what that is, which hopefully most of you guys know what that is. And if you don't, it's totally fine. You can research that. But what it is, simply how I explain it is, if on average, I'll say, hey, Mr. Buyer, if on average a home is being sold for $100,000, which of course is not the case here in Hawaii, right? But if a home is being sold or listed at $100,000, but closing at $103,000, that's 103% sales price to list price ratio. And what that means simply is homes in this area or community or on island or whatever that circle that you've drawn to look at that stat, it's selling for 3% above asking. And the reason why that's important to know, Mr. Buyer, is because there's a lot of shows on TV, or you have neighbors that say, hey, you should try this. And if somebody's asking for $900,000 for their home, just offer them, $700 and see what happens, kind of thing. Well, we look at the data and actual statistics to make our decisions to drive us forward into how we're going to negotiate that. So if everything is going in a specific area for 3% above the asking price, we know that we're going to have to pay a little bit higher than what the asking price is if we want to get that property in that area. Likewise, if we're looking in another area that is 97% sales price to list price ratio, we don't have to pay asking price, right? We might have a little bit of room for negotiation. So when I'm explaining this to them, I'm trying to empower them with information so they understand some of the things that we are looking at to drive that forward too. Then I'll talk about days on market and how that's calculated, the average days on market in a certain area. I'll also tell them about, which they typically find very interesting, especially for first-time home buyers. Or and by the way, even if someone has told you that they've bought 10 homes before, go through this process as if they're a first-time home buyer, because I guarantee you that most agents have skipped right through this and didn't educate them about this at all. So you're going to still come out to be like the cream of the crop in terms of other agents that they may have worked with. But one of the things that I find a lot of buyers are very interested in is they hear the terms on TV, they read it, they Google it. It's a seller's market. Oh my God, it's a seller's market. They say it like it's a seller's market. And I always say, I go, yeah, there's an actual formula. There's a calculation for how we arrive there, whether it's a buyer's market or seller's market. And what that term simply means is who is in control of that negotiation. So if it's a seller's market, the sellers are typically in control of that. If it's a buyer's market, the buyers are in control of that. But that comes down to how many months of inventory that we have. So I explain that to them. When I explain that to them, what you're really doing is you're taking all these words that they may not know the answer to or how we arrive there, and you're making it very human and digestible for them. And so the point of this is you're doing something that no one else has done, is you're connecting all these dots. And they might have heard these terms for years, like, oh yeah, days on market. I don't know what that means or why that matters. Sales price to list price ratio is probably something that they don't know. Seller's market are things that they probably have heard. And then you're going to explain what that means specifically. Like, in certain areas, the months of inventory is like less than 1 month. And so, as you guys know, or you may not, here's the range. If it's from 0 to 5 months of inventory, it's a seller's market. 6 months, it's a neutral market. And anything 7 months and above is a buyer's market. And the depending on what that number is that's where things get really interesting in terms of how you negotiate. When I was in Arizona, it was a heavy buyer's market. In some areas, there was, like 18 months of inventory. 18 months of inventory. Things were sitting on there was some property that were, gorgeous property that were sitting on the market for like 3 years. So that's a different market, right? That's a market that you can walk into and the asking price is $400,000. And you go in there and go, I'll give you $275, and I want the RV in the back and the jet skis and the BMW in the front. And by the way, this color sucks. Can you paint it? And who chose this carpet? I want, you can make all these kind of demands, and guess what? You can get a lot of it. That's unheard of here, right? Here, you can't even ask the seller to change a light bulb without having some pushback. So you can't take even for the buyers or sellers, and as well as your own, you can't take your experience from another market and another time and apply it right now. You have to understand what's going on right now, because that's how you properly negotiate. You got to figure out what the landscape is. So I then go on to explain, if they've seen any of those shows on TV, because I want to get that right out of the way, because if you don't address that kind of stuff, it's going to creep up. You guys ever watch some of those real estate shows? And they're like, oh my God, I don't watch any of them, by the way, but like, I love Selling Sunset and I love whatever those things are. I'm like, yeah, those are, just so you know, that's all TV shows. So and then I kind of joke and I say, I wish it were that easy. I'm going to show you homes for 30 minutes. We're going to have 3 or 4 commercial breaks. And by the time we come back, the home that you selected be fully renovated with a nice reveal and then confetti and balloons. But unfortunately, it's, real life, and it takes a lot longer and a lot more effort than that. And I kind of normalize that so that it gets that thing out of the way. And then I explain too what the norm is in terms of points, because people I get this question asked all the time, especially if they're coming from the mainland. Hey, can they pay my points? Can I ask points? Can I ask credits? And I ask for these kind of things. And so you can address that in the market update as well. So the things that I usually discuss with them is, it's buyer's market, seller's market. What does that mean? Months of inventory, giving them a definition of that. If you guys master those kind of things, I'm telling you, I would use you, because you're pouring value into me. You're coming not from a sales perspective, like, please do business with me. You're pouring into them and showing what your value is, explaining days on market and what the average is, sales price to list price ratio, what the average there is, as well as explaining how you get to those numbers. And then kind of, the market norm. So make sure you guys master those kind of things. And then I go into expectations. I let them know that, hey, this is a crazy market right now. And the good news about Hawaii's real estate market is, and you guys can use these stats if you want to use them too, because I use them all the time. But especially if they're coming from the mainland, I say, this is an appreciation market, not a cash flow market. There are 2 different types of markets. And sometimes you can get both in the same, but this is absolutely an appreciation market. And what that simply means is we have a very robust, consistent market. And over the last 40 plus years, we average about 5% a year on property appreciation. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, that is really, really good, especially as consistent as that is. Compared to the mainland, there are a lot of, we're usually always like, in the top 10 in property appreciation markets. But in the mainland, the other markets or metro areas that come in and out of the top 10 are usually like, sorry, Rosa, it's usually Northern California is one of them. And that literally comes in and out depending on tech, depending on other, there's a lot of other factors that influence that. And when it's hot, oh my God, it's hot. I just talked to an agent just the other day where someone won a listing, waived every single contingency, every single one, and overpaid by $250,000. And that's not unusual. That's just a thing, right, Rosa?
Yeah, that's the norm. I was just consulting with a buyer of mine before we got on, and for a two bed, one bath house in Alameda, usually goes for 1.2 million around about. And I just did comps where that's changed in the last 6 weeks. We're at 1.35 now.
Unbelievable.
And yeah, insane. Good schools, it'll do it.
I mean, so here's the thing is, again, not a bad market, but you got to understand markets like that is not for the faint of heart. So Rosa's probably built up a thick skin there, but it ebb and flows for a lot of different reasons. And so it's kind of the land of extremes. New York is like that. There's other metro areas that are like that too, that when it's hot like that, that's what's happening, which thankfully in our market, it's kind of steady Freddy. It's consistently always kind of it does not doing anything crazy. We don't want crazy. We just want consistent, which is good for buyers when you're doing your buyer consultation too. Because could you imagine having a buyer consultation when the market shifted in an extreme market like that? Then they're saying, should we buy? Because isn't the market going to flatten out? And imagine having that kind of dialogue with someone. And I used to live in California and Arizona, so I've had those kind of conversations. Those are tough buyer consultations. The main thing too, though, is you never want to predict anything or promise anything or guarantee anything. But trust me when I tell you, you will be sued. Don't do that. Just what I absolutely always go to when people ask me, well, you're sure? I'm like, I'm not sure about anything, but I always rely on stats. I go, here's the market data. Here's what the market has done over the last 40 years consistently, so you understand how robust our market is. And here's what it's done over the last, 5 or 10 years. And especially here's a great one too, is to give someone an indication of whether they should or shouldn't. Oftentimes what I'll do is, especially if they're military, because we get a lot of military buyers, right? If they're military and they've just arrived here and they're looking to purchase, I will look back at 3 or 4 years. And I'll say, just for instance, the house that you're looking at here 3 or 4 years ago was selling for this. Now it's on the market for this. That's X amount of appreciation that it's gone up over that time frame. Have you been able to ever save up that much money? And usually the answer is no. And then I go, that's exactly why this is a tool. This is not a bury me in the backyard, my dream home, I'm never leaving. This is a tool. This is a wealth building tool. And if I can get you to a point where after 3 or 4 years, based upon the data that I'm showing you, that you can walk away with whatever the number looks like, depending on what they're buying, but 20, 30, 50, $100,000 in that time frame. Again, make it consistent with what they're trying to look at. But would that be good for you? Would that be good for your wealth building opportunity? Would that be a stepping stone to launch you into that wealth building? And the answer is always going to be yes. This is a crazy statistic. Malin's heard me say this probably many times before, but homeowners are 47 times wealthier than renters. Homeowners are 47 times wealthier than renters. Isn't that crazy? It's not because they have cash coming out of their pockets and, leaking out of their glove compartments and stuffed under the mattress or anything like that. It's because of the tool that they invested in. It's literally because that property is appreciating and it's doing what it's supposed to do completely on its own. They would have been paying for a rent on their own, but instead they're just converting it over to a mortgage. And because of that, it's creating equity. So it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. That's also one too, by the way, that's a great mover if someone is on the fence about whether they should rent or own, is give them that statistic. So I let them know in this current climate, you know, it's a heavy seller's market, and we might offer 6, 7, 8, 9 offers before one's accepted, and that's okay. The reason that's really important to understand and explain that to them. And the reason is because if you don't explain that to them, they think they write one offer and didn't get it. They're like, oh, bummer. Okay. Second offer, they don't get it. They're in their mind, they're on their way to tapping out. They're like, you know what? I think God's sending me a message. The universe is telling me something. Like they get into that mode. So you have to explain to them, we may write 6, 7, 8, 9 offers before one's accepted. That's totally okay. This is a business. We're in business to try to get one to stick by making sure that it fits all your needs, fits your budget. But guess what? There's also 30 other people that it might fit exactly their needs too. There's a limited amount of inventory. The good news is when I get you to the other side of that, when you're an owner, man, you control that negotiation. Should it remain a seller's market in a few years when you sell? We're on the other side of that and you're good to go. So make sure that you explain what that expectation is on writing offers and showing property and so forth. Then I go through the process with them. I explain to them what the process is. We're going to get you pre-approved. This is really, really important, Mr. Buyer. Have you already spoken with a lender? It's kind of 50-50 whether they have or haven't. If they're on the mainland, I explain to them, Chase Bank, Citibank, Bank of America, Navy Fed, USAA, those are great companies, great banks. Not so great here in terms of our real estate market, and especially in terms of our contract. And in fact, there are many cases where if you have one of those lenders, the seller won't approve your offer, even if your offer might be the strongest offer. So I highly recommend that you get approved by a local lender. So, and if you need further explanation, what I tell them is contracts matter, right? It's a legally binding contract. So if we write an offer for 30 days, Mr. Buyer, which is very normal in this market, am I confident that USAA or Navy Fed or one of those companies can deliver in 30 days? No, I'm not confident. And what happens if they don't? Well, what happens is you're in breach of contract. And we can request an extension, but we need the other side. We need the seller to agree to that extension request. And if they don't, they can kick us out of contract. They can kick us out of escrow. And if it's our fault that they breached, now we jeopardize your earnest money deposit. And we also jeopardize you buying the home that we got into escrow with in the first place. Usually when you explain it in that way, that it eliminates any further questions. But it's important to explain that and to know that. Mainland banks do not underwrite well here for whatever reason. A different class for a different day, but what a lender should be doing is working backwards into the contract. So what they should be doing is going, oh, you have a 30-day contract? Well, we need to close on this day, which means that we need to sign on this day, which means we need to order the appraisal by this day, which means like they literally need to work it backwards to figure out all their days. Typically, brick and mortar is like an actual bank, like a, American Savings or Bank of Hawaii or whatever. Brick and mortar, as well as mainland banks, they don't underwrite like that. They just take the contract and just give it to someone and go, yeah, when you have time, just go ahead. And that's like literally the worst thing that you can do. So great companies to go to if they have good deals or specials or whatever it is for refinances, because refinances, there's not the legally binding contract component. It's kind of, a little bit more willy-nilly. So you want to do, if the client wants to do a refinance, you want to do a refinance afterwards, fine, no problem at all. Don't use them for a purchase though. So I explained the process to them, get pre-approved. If you work with a lender that you're partnering up with, build those kind of relationships with people. I typically will send 2, maybe 3 in some occasions. options. And the reason is, and I explained to my partners, my vendor partners, the ones who are loan officers or lenders that are trying to earn your business, I explained to them that, it's up to you to earn their business. But if you rely on just one, sometimes some clients, especially their new clients, they think that you're in cahoots or you get some sort of commission from them or whatever the thing is. And this is just me. You don't have to do this by any stretch, especially if you're on a team. Check with your team leader and find out what their process is. But what I've always done is I send out 2 email introductions, introducing them to each loan officer independently. Hey, John, this is Carl. Carl, this is John. John just came to me. I just had a buyer consultation. Great guy, military, first-time home buyer. Here's his rank. Here's where he's going to be stationed. He'd love to get pre-approved. We're going to start looking at properties this weekend. Please reach out to him. Send the same exact email to Jessica. Jessica, this is John. Same thing. And I let John know that I'm sending out those 2 emails, introducing them. And I say, both of them are great. I can vouch for both of them, but chat with both and see what they can do for you, and also see which one's a good personality fit. And the reason why that's helpful, in my opinion, is because if it goes kind of sideways with one or the other, there's still that other person that otherwise they tend not to have trust in you. If you're like, you gotta go with Jessica's amazing, and then there's a weird thing with him and Jessica, or something happens along the line, now it's like you're in cahoots with Jessica. So I always give a couple of them and let them pick whichever is the best one. Get pre-approved, and I'll tell the buyer, as soon as you get pre-approved, I'm gonna start getting you ready for the properties that you want and that you qualify for. So that segue then becomes, let's talk about your wants and needs. Let's discuss what it is that you're looking for. And especially people who are relocating, just locals here as well, but especially relocating individuals have no idea what to expect and what they want and what have you. So you got to educate them throughout that process. The one that I had just today, the questions that I asked was very simple. I said, how big is your family? Because I want to know how many people are coming over. That way I can kind of guide them to like the right size of things. I asked how many kids that they have. I asked if they have any pets. If the answer, by the way, is yes to pets, great. Do you mind telling me like what the dogs, cats? If dogs, how big, size, weight, breed? Why do you think that's important to find out?
Where they can buy. You can't always buy a condo with a big dog, or even some neighborhoods. That's
right. Some have heavy restrictions on weight or breed or whatever it is. The last thing I had this is years ago. There was an agent in my office previous to coming here, had closed on a transaction. And when the client went to go move in, their breed was a banned breed in the association for that building. Imagine getting your keys and then like 3 days later finding out that your breed is not even allowed. And for any of you here that are pet owners, your pets are like your kids. It's a non-negotiable. It's not like, oh, they're not going to allow Rusty, my pit bull, in. Well, I guess I'm just going to give him to the pound. That's not even an option. That's your kid. Can you imagine that? Imagine how upset that buyer would be with their agent. You got to ask those questions for sure. I also asked if, and again, these are things that can change in time, but on the initial call, you want to ask, are you okay with a condo or townhome versus single family? If they need a garage, with the bedrooms and bathrooms, that kind of thing. If they need a yard, if they need any other amenities. I word it like that because I don't want to offend anyone either, but if someone is disabled or what have you, they may need something specific. They might need a unit on the first floor or no stairs or whatever it is. So you just want to ask very politely if there's any amenities that are important to them or that they need. Here's the beauty of it too. If you go through this process and you do it thoroughly, and I think Rosa mentioned it, and I think Hiroko mentioned it too, the time frame length of time for your buyer consultation, 45 minutes is short. 45 minutes is like you were very efficient and you nailed it. Either you're in the zone and you've been doing this a long time at a high efficiency, or you might have been speaking a little bit too fast. So 45 minutes is probably the shortest that you want to go. An hour and a half, meanwhile, is probably a little bit too long, but sometimes that happens depending on the questions. If they're asking questions, by the way, and it gets to an hour and a half, that's not a bad thing, because you want to knock all those things out right then and there, as opposed to making that a habit. Who mentioned that? Hiroko, right? You mentioned that your client's calling you 30 minutes every day or whatever it is. You don't need to have buyer consultations every day. If you nail it that one time, it'll help get you kind of in that zone. But the great thing about a buyer consultation, if you have a good one and you do it the right way, you can do what's called a reconsult. A reconsult is, hey, let's sit down and re-strategize. And it doesn't sound harsh or offensive in any way, but trust me when I say, if you didn't have a buyer consultation at all, and then you try to have one like midway after you've shown properties and maybe written a few contracts, the look that they give you is as if they're being called into the principal's office, or you're trying to break up with them, or it's that kind of vibe that they give you. So that's part of setting that tone the right way. So you're going to go over the wants and needs. I really don't get too much into the budget part of it because they don't have a clue. I mean, I don't go unless they've already spoken to the lender. But if they haven't spoken to the lender, I'm not getting into, at what price point are you looking at? Because they have no clue. They're going to, if first-time home buyers, they might be like, I don't know, 200,000. I'm like, okay, you can't buy anything for 200,000 here. So you don't know. And then I let them know that as soon as the lender gets them pre-approved, if they're military, they're going to have BAH and COLA, and then their regular income. If it is a VA that you're dealing with, once you get everything set up, you're going to create an auto search. And here's something that I always try to stick with is, Zillow. I'm going to say the Z word because we're in a safe space and no one is here, right? No one is going to report me. But Zillow's is a brokerage now, so we have to, our code of ethics. We can't speak bad about another company or brokerage or what have you. But I'm going to give you pre-brokerage statistics prior to Zillow becoming a brokerage. Is that my loophole? Yeah, I think that's a good loophole. Prior to Zillow becoming a brokerage, they did a study and they discovered that Zillow's information on their website was about 60% accurate. 60%. That's terrible. So all the zestimates and all that kind of stuff, that you can throw that right out the window. And the reason is just everything's just automated and put together. Now Zillow, fast forward, Zillow is a brokerage. They are a competitor. And Zillow's model, as well as Redfin and some other, what I like to refer to as Wall Street brokerages. Wall Street brokerages are kind of like, they're a different model. They're kind of like a body without a soul. They're like, they're not pouring into trying to get people educated the right way. They want to eliminate the process and make it real easy for someone to just go online and do kind of everything there without the agent involved, ideally. Well, what you want to make sure that you do in your buyer consultation is don't say anything ill about any other company. Don't say anything bad about another company, certainly another agent. But what you do want to do is you want to stress that we are a technology company, because KW really is a technology company. You want them to be sticky to either or both, and I personally I use both, either the MLS auto emails as well as the KW app, and that's it. The reason I even brought this whole thing up with Zillow or Redfin is because for new agents, I cannot tell you how much this will happen. If you skip this process and then you just go through the buyer consultation, your buyer is going to send you, emails and text messages. Hey, I just saw this on Zillow. Can you look this? I'm like, and is that a big deal? It may not be, but here's the thing. Zillow is a data mining company. Their whole goal is to capture your client's data because they were searching for it online and sell it to another agent. Or themselves. So if your client that you've worked so hard to get to this point, you've had a buyer consultation, you've showed properties to, you've written offers to, now suddenly they're going to be getting calls from 3 or 4 other real estate agents. How would that make you feel? Would that we don't need to do that, right? So just try to educate them and say, hey, listen, there are a lot of other companies out there that have a huge presence, public presence and websites and all these like fancy tools and things, what appears to be accurate. Unfortunately, many of them are super, super, super inaccurate. So I'm going to hook you up with 2 things. One is going to be the MLS. So right to the source. That's what brokers and real estate agents and licensees use, is the MLS. That's number one. I'm going to hook you up with what we call an auto email. So the very moment that something new comes to market or has a price reduction that gets you right into that sweet spot of your approval and what you're qualified for, you're going to be notified immediately. So that's number one. You're going to go right to the source. Number 2 is, I mentioned to you before that KW is a technology company. So we have unbelievable technology. And in fact, some of our technology, other companies out there they use, or they paid for our license in order to use it, which it's phenomenal. The accuracy, the tools, and everything else is amazing. So I'm going to send you our KW app that you can search for homes right on your phone. And I'm also going to set you up on an auto email too. So we're going to be hit on a couple different ways. I would really, really request, Mr. Buyer, if we can just use those 2 things. So I don't want to confuse the issue. What oftentimes happens, Mr. Buyer, is the other sites, because of their inaccuracy, it's going to show you things that are already in escrow, and it's just going to confuse you. I'm looking at things that are available right now. So we want to focus on what's available and what we can get into to see and make offers on right away. And that usually squashes all the other companies in that conversation altogether. And then I explain whatever your next process is, and every team and every agent can do this a little bit differently, but how they are going to communicate with you to set up the showings. So for me personally, what I always tell them to do is please text me the address or the MLS number of the ones that you're interested in. And what I do is I do a bunch of research on your behalf. I find out if there's any offers, if it's in escrow, if it's been in escrow before, if it's been in escrow before and now it's available again. I want to find out why. I'll find out if there are any disclosure issues that I need to research, because you're trying to portray to them the value. Otherwise, in their minds, they might think, why do I even need the agent? I can just look it up on Zillow on my own and do all these things. So you're letting them know that there's a lot of research that you have to do on their behalf. Jackie, you have a question? Jackie, you're on mute if you are speaking.
Hi there. Yes,
Hi.
I was disabled from the video. Maybe I was moving my head too much, but my question is, I was just like, can I record you? Because I want to listen to this when I sleep, because this is so incredibly valuable. And it's like reading a book. The 3rd time you still pick up things that even the first time you didn't. But my question is to get to the point about providing value and that inside information. I found that it's very hit and miss as a relatively new realtor on inside information. When you call people and say like, hey, I know you're in escrow, sometimes they're very open about telling you at what price or what's going on. And other times they will not tell you a thing till it sells. And I really want to give my clients that value. And I was wondering if you had any info on it just while you were on that topic right this moment, if I was lucky enough to get your attention.
Yeah, great questions. And this is being recorded, so we'll send you the copy of the recording. And then, like I said in the beginning too, anyone who needs me, I'm here for you guys. So if you want to schedule like a one-on-one or what have you to go over maybe some or you want to show me what you've done on your buyer consultation and have me kind of give some input on what you can do to improve it or insert different things in there, I'm happy to do that. So you let me know.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So a couple things. And thank you, Jackie, for your input, because that brings up a whole nother thing that I think is very valuable and relevant, which is what can agents say or not say? They don't have to tell you how many offers they have in hand, and certainly don't have to tell you what the specific dollar amounts of those offers are. And sometimes you get them and sometimes you don't. But I'll always ask. So the way that I ask specifically is, and I explain this to the buyers too. I'll say, hey, listen, when I do my research and I'm calling around, they're not obligated to, their interest is to protect the seller. So they're not going to tell me, yep, I got 3 offers and here's the offer number 1 was 472,500. They're not going to give me the details like that. Sometimes people will slip up and tell me, but I will always ask. And the questions that when I call and I ask is, I'll say, do you have any offers in hand? That's the first thing, because I'm trying to figure out what the urgency is and what I'm dealing with, right? Do you have any offers in hand? And if the answer is yes or no, if it's yes, have you accepted any offers yet? When are you reviewing offers? Are the sellers out of town? Or are they on island? Because that's also going to create a potential delay. And then the other, and is there any disclosures? And then the last question, which I think is the most important one, is besides price, what's most important to the seller? And the reason why that's an important one, that's a good psychological question, is I've had offers accepted that were not the strongest offers. And it's because I asked that question that they said, thank you so much for asking. No one's ever asked that question before. Yes, we need a post-occupancy closing. And they're giving me kind of the specifics of what their client is looking for. And of course, it still has to match up with my buyer's needs and timelines and so forth. But what if it does? What if it matches up exactly? And then you wrote an offer that doesn't even need to be countered because you just asked the right question. And the other thing too is, here's where the salesmanship comes in, is there's so much ego in our industry. I'm sure that some of you new agents who have just started have already gotten a taste of that. There's some agents that, think they walk on water just because of maybe sales or number of transactions or whatever it is. There's ego involved. You have to put ego aside, and you almost have to sell yourself to the other agent just as you would with a client. Why it's so easy to work with you, why you're a professional. Sometimes it's tough. There's a couple of you on this call, which I'm not going to call out, but there's a couple of you on this call right now that I've heard stories, some of which are a little bit aggressive in terms of the conversations other agents at other firms have had with you. And it's all ego-driven stuff. And it's a bummer. It doesn't need to be there, but it's okay. Like our purpose is to help our client. Don't take anything personal at all. So when you call, it's literally, you're trying to just get through to them to get to information for your client and show that it's easy to work with you. So if I'm showing a property, let's say I show 10 properties and the client, I can tell that the client likes a specific property and we might be moving forward to writing an offer. I'm already texting and emailing the other agent. I don't expect a response. I'm just I'm showing what I'm doing is I'm showing how well I communicate. Hey, thank you so much for letting me see this beautiful listing. It's amazing. I just left. I locked up. Everything's good to go. I'll let you know if my client's interested in making an offer. It sounds simple. It sounds like why would you even bother doing that? I'm showing them how amazing I am and how well I communicate. And I'm also covering myself too, that I didn't let them know that I left and I just locked up, because I don't want, did you leave the door open? Did you leave? I just told them that I left everything. Or if you see anything amiss, hey, the air condition's on, the property's vacant, air condition is left on. Did you want me to turn that off? You just let me know. I'm happy to do so. You know what I mean? You're looking out for them, kind of thing. And those kind of things do go a long way. So you're selling yourself on how you communicate as well. Those things are super, super important.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. You asked another question too in there. I'm trying to think of how.
Oh, you know what I was thinking is, what is there? I get this question all the time.
Yeah.
Are they telling the truth? So when say, how many offers have you had? Everybody is that can I trust that? And I don't know the answer.
That's a tricky one. Are they telling the truth? I always operate on, I hope that they are. I am never going to make an assessment that someone is lying. That would just make me mental if I even did that. I would hope that our industry is operating on because when we're licensed, we have to, per our license, operate on a higher ethical standard than someone who's not licensed. That's what that license is there for. We have a code of ethics. People like non-licensed individuals do not have a code of ethics. They might have internal principles, but they don't have a code of ethics that they have to operate on, by which if you don't, you get fined, sued, reprimanded in a variety of different ways. So the answer is I would hope so. But there's no way to tell if you can prove that someone is lying, you can turn them in and make an ethics complaint. But if it's blatant, then do it. We owe it to our industry. In fact, that's part of our ethical code as well, is that if you see something that's unethical, you have to point that out. But don't be that person, not to say you, Jackie, but in general, don't be that person that's just like looking for every violation and reporting every violation either. But who knows, right? If someone's telling the truth or not, you would hope so. All you can do is ask the questions and try to get the answers and try to make the best assessment possible. But I will tell you this is kind of moving to some of the tips and tricks portion of it, is the way that you also show value as well is what I tell my buyers is I say, hey, listen, we're competing out there with a couple of different things. I mean, there's a lack of inventory. So for every home that's available that you like, just know that there's probably another 50 people that like that same home. That's just that's what competition is. That's what creates that seller's market. The supply and demand is kind of off kilter a little bit. So I'm going to run a few strategies simultaneously for your benefit. So when I set up the auto email, Mr. Buyer, I'm going to have one that says active listings available in whatever they're looking for. Let's say it's in Kapolei area, single family homes. I'm going to run that and it's going to say active listings. I'm going to set up another search for you that's properties that are in escrow. And they might say, well, why would I even look at that? That's in escrow. It's not even available. Well, the reason is because this was pre-pandemic. I would say 30% of all properties would fall out of escrow. Now that the crazy market that we're in right now, probably 10%, but there's still an opportunity. I would say 10% of the properties that are in escrow will fall out for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's J1, maybe it's financing, maybe it's who knows. So what I explain to them is I say, hey, Mr. Buyer, so here's the thing is we're going to go fishing, so to speak, in a couple of different ways. Number one is for the properties that are active, that aren't already in escrow, we're going to go fish with a line. I'm just casting a line. I'll wait for a bite. They're going to respond. They're either going to say no, yes, or they're going to counter. And we can deal with that as we deal with that for each line that we cast. Then there's this other section here of properties that fit your needs and fit your criteria, but they're all in escrow already. There might be 10 of them that you love. And you say, I love all of these, but they're already in escrow. So what I'm going to do for you, Mr. Buyer, is that's a different category. We're going to handle that one a little bit differently. I'm going to reach out to all 10 and find out where they are in escrow. If they just open up escrow, great. If they're closing tomorrow, well, that's off the list because that doesn't help us at all. I'm going to find out where they are in escrow. And depending on where they are, I might ask them, will you be entertaining any backup offers? So of the 10, we might find 2 or 3 that we can submit a backup offer on. We're fishing with a net. Now I'm casting a net. I'm not fishing with a pole because we can make an offer on all 3 of them. You're not buying one property here and 3 of these properties here. I'm not getting you to buy 4 properties, Mr. Buyer. We're just strategizing and operating with a little bit higher sense of efficiency than most other agents would. And by the way, they usually love that. They're like, oh my God, thank you. That sounds great. And then on the flip side, applying that same rule as well, there may be, and it depends on timing and their need and condition and so forth too, but that's the same principle that I would apply to short sales and foreclosures and bank-owned properties. Because there's so many of them that don't respond on a timely manner. So you can write an offer on a few of them and may not hear back for a couple of months. So if imagine you have a backup offer here, you have a couple of offers going out on the short sale, and you still haven't found one that's been accepted. Now 2 months into it, one of these or both call you back and go, hey, you're in backup position. You're in first backup position. You're ready to go. Or this one says, yeah, the bank finally accepted your offer. This would have never happened if you didn't plant that seed and you got to run a couple of plays at the same time, especially in this kind of market. And then the last one too is create your own inventory. Don't discount FSBOs. Sorry, Jackie, were you going to say something?
No. I just, I'm listening. Your words are golden. Truly.
Thank you. So don't discount FSBOs. So FSBOs are for sale by owner, and look them up too. We post them. So I know that FSBOs can be important. I have my assistant that she posts FSBOs. I think it's weekly. We send them out and we post it on Facebook. So we're trying to create more inventory. So if you have buyers that are looking for something specific that's you're not finding on the MLS, it could be on the FSBO side. Any questions so far? Oh, hold on. Sorry, I got messages in the chat. Okay, I have a lot of messages in the chat. Hold on. Let me just back up here. There's a lot of private messages too. Let me just look at this. Chloe asks, and this is to everyone, how do you get your clients to see the value in the buyer consult as and not just first showings? Some of what I tell them is I'm going to give you some tools and some strategies, but I want to understand what it is that you're looking for, so I can curate what I'm searching for to meet specifically what you're targeting, and also get you the price that you want and all your wants and needs and so forth. But then I kind of hint at the strategy I just mentioned. I apply a lot of strategies at one time, and I got to sit down with you to explain that to you, because I need information from you so that I can provide you with those tools. Sam says yes, and how to get them to follow through and show up for the consult.
Yes, like if you have the meeting set and then they kind of ghost you after that.
Has that happened to you?
Mm-hmm.
How many times?
Just once, and then I heard someone else that happened to, like just a few days before too.
Well, I would say that that doesn't happen to me very often, but I can see how the lead source that could create that. What I mean by that is if you are scheduling a buyer consultation through like an online lead, as an example, the chance of them not showing up might be a little bit greater than someone that you've met at an open house or what. That's just kind of the nature of those things. But for me, personally, what I typically would do is I would, this is just me, so you can do this, but I have my assistant call and confirm that appointment the day before. So if you meet them, let's just say it's an open house person. You meet an open house person, you had a face-to-face with them, so they know who you are now. Immediately, like if it's open houses on Sunday, you kind of tentatively say, hey, let's get together on Wednesday, just making that time frame up. On Sunday, absolutely send them a copy of your digital business card. Do you guys use something like that? I have a digital business card that I send them so that it looks like my business card, but not a whole lot of real estate agents use that. So it kind of makes it look a little bit more professional. I send them that and I say, thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting with you. I cannot wait to meet you on Wednesday so I can give you some tips and some strategies on how we can find your property and immediately start building wealth. Like you got to plant the certain seeds when you're confirming this as well. The other thing too is I would oftentimes do this just to get to wet their palate a little bit, is if you are meeting them at an open house, I would oftentimes, this is not the buyer consultation. I mean, we're just not an open house consultation. This is more a buyer consultation, but at the open house, I would typically have a folder that was labeled off-market properties and another folder that was labeled short sales and foreclosures. And they every single time, and I would put it, I'd have it real big right next to the sign-in sheet. And everyone would always go, "Ooh, what's that? Can I see that?" I go, "Ooh, you know what? That's my only copy." But please put your phone number, your email address, and I'm happy to go over some of that with you in the buyer consultation. And if they've already filled it out, what they often will do is I go, let me change my email address, because they gave you a bogus email address or a bogus phone number, and they'll change it to the correct one. But you got to show your value as you're leading up to it. So I would confirm the appointment that evening, thank them for meeting with them or meeting you. And then the day before, if you're meeting with them on Wednesday, on Tuesday, just say, hey, I look forward to meeting with you. By the way, here's my office address. You're going to park here, whatever the thing is at that point. but that doesn't happen. That shouldn't happen often if you are showing value. Okay, hold on. My assistant sent me something. Let me check my email real quick here. Steph, I don't see it. Where did she send it?
She said she sent it via email.
Can you, oh, hold on. Can you ask her to check again?
Okay.
I don't doubt her, but it's probably me. I don't
All
see
right.
it.
Mm-hmm.
It's always me. Guys can't find anything. I swear to, I yell at my wife constantly, and I always tell her that she's trying to hide stuff from me for job security's sake. Okay. So while she's looking for that kind of stuff, in the buyer consultation, you're going to want to keep asking them questions too. You don't want to just talk, and that's really important. One of the things that I'll do ahead of time is, and Julie mentioned this. I'm sorry, not Julie. Rosa mentioned this, that she'll send out a questionnaire. Now, I love that idea. That has not been successful for me at all. I tend to think it has a lot to do with culture and specific areas, meaning like Hawaii versus California. Because when I was in California, they did that. In Arizona, my clients responded. Here, it's a little bit like crickets. I'm not saying they don't respond at all, but they'll pick and choose. They're like, oh, you're giving me homework now? I got to do this. It's a different response. But I do send out stuff. I want to get to know them on at least some level, or I'll call them just to get some information. Here's the things that are most important to me is if they've been pre-approved already, if they've purchased a home in the past before, and I also want to know, obviously, if they're military or not, and where they're stationed. But I also want to know what they do for occupation, because I will absolutely, my buyer consult will look a little bit differently if it's like an engineer versus another type of profession. Engineers, like, just give me, if it's an engineer or someone who's like a higher IQ, I got to fill my buyer consultation with more stats. That's how I'm going to win them over. Versus someone who's absolutely not in that level, but like is more touchy feely, I got to tone down the stats and talk more about other stuff, other value. So that's helpful in finding out what that is. But during the buyer consultation, I'm asking questions. I'll pepper with, if it's on Zoom and I'm seeing their eyes kind of disappear off camera, or they do this a lot. If they do this, they're looking at you and they're going, they're just having conversations with someone on the side. They're no longer engaged. Ask them a question to pull them right back in. Otherwise, you're talking to yourself. Steph, did you find that? Or did you ask her?
I asked her, but I resent it to you.
You did? Okay. Hold on. Okay, hang on, guys. I'm going to look for something real quick. That's not it. 1 second. So Stephanie, I found the roadmap. Ask her to send me, because she sent it to me before. Ask her to send me the link to my buyer consultation, like my buyer consultation, while I go through this one.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you. So, Rosa, to answer your question, this is what I created, and this is just one page, but it helps. And I'll share this with you guys too. You can make this your own or whatever. I just made this because to me, this is really helpful in the buyer consultation when I'm educating about process. Can you guys see it? Is it big enough? Is that large enough, Rosa? Can you see it? Okay. So the way that I would just walk people through it is, and it makes you look as though you really know what's going on. So what I say is, here's a roadmap. So prior to offer accepted, we're getting you pre-approved. We're looking for properties, and then offer accepted. Congratulations. We're high-fiving. But immediately after the offer is accepted, we got initial deposit. So I need you to wire transfer your funds through escrow. And then you might need to pause and explain what escrow is and why they're there and that whole thing. That's part of that education process. And then I explain to them, you see all that portion in red where it says contingency? Those are all contingencies that allow us to take pause to ensure that we're good before we move forward. So the very first thing, which to me is one of the most important contingencies we have here, is the home inspection. We're going to find out everything there is to know about the property. We're going to hire a third-party home inspector to inspect the property, and it's more than likely that we're going to find out more things than the seller even knows about the property, because the seller may not have been in the crawl space in the attic ever. They may not have known that that outlet or plug doesn't work because that couch and sofa has been there, in front of it for 10 years. They may not have known that there was a leak in the bedroom bathroom. What am I saying? The master bedroom's bathroom. So we're going to know more about the property than the sellers likely know. Then we're going to have a seller disclosure, which is required by law. The seller has to disclose everything about the property, good, bad, indifferent, upgrades, anything. And we get to cancel based on that as well. We're going to get the title report. We're going to get any association documents. We're going to get a termite report. We have a financing contingency, which means that you don't have to overpay for the property. You do if you wrote in a appraisal contingency. If it's a single family home, we're going to get a survey. And then we'll do the final walkthrough. And the final walkthrough is to ensure that there's no new damage or anything happened since the last time we were at the property, which was the home inspection. And if everything is good, then we get our keys. And high five, balloons, confetti. That's usually what I walk them through in that way. And so as far as, what I'm looking at when I go over that with them, that's super, super easy. You guys all want a copy of that? Yeah. Okay. Let me see.
I have a question about all
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah. Rosa, go ahead.
So how would you go over that in a buyer consultation?
How would you go over
Like,
that?
you ran down the list, but what does that mean?
So I remember I was telling you the order that I go is,
Yeah.
I do my little bio. I go through a market update. I go through expectations. I go through process. And I insert that into the process. That's where that is. Then I go over wants and needs, the MLS setup, and then showings.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, I understand that because that's what I do too. But I screenshot it. Now I can't find it.
Oh, do you want me to put it back on the screen?
Put on this. Yeah, please.
Oh, I have to find it too now. Hold on. Okay, hold on. What did I do with it? I literally just had it on.
I just have specific questions over.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, no
each
problem. No
thing.
problem. And while I'm pulling it up, Steph, tell Jewel I still don't have the link. She sent me a link to my own buyer consultation, which has the cover of the magazine thing that I was on. It's that one that I'm looking for. I just need to link to it.
Okay.
Thanks. Here you go.
Okay, so we know that initial deposit's due in 3 days, right? So
Yeah,
they do
and
that.
The reason why I don't put days, obviously, is because that could change. I'm just kind of giving a general overview, but yes.
How can that change?
Because you can put you can put next business. I mean, the contract is written by negotiation. It's not a format that you can't deviate from. So in other words, the initial deposit could be the next business day. It could be 3 days. It could be 3 days plus the secondary deposit after home inspection. I'm not trying to confuse them with the nuance of the specific contract. I'm giving them an idea of what that roadmap looks like. But here's the difference of what I do versus other people and how it's been effective is there's a lot of agents that will say things like, I've literally heard people say this too. They'll go, if you work with me, I'm going to get you into a home and we'll get into escrow like in a week. A couple of days of this whole process in a week, we're already in escrow, we're rocking and rolling, we're good to go. That's like over promising, especially in a market like this. What I'll typically do is I'm not sky is falling. I'm just giving the realistic expectations. I'm saying, hey, the home ownership is amazing. Trust me. And there's always a good time to buy. I'm still looking to buy. I just bought last year. I'm going to be buying another property. So I'm not scared to buy whatsoever. I think it's a great opportunity. With that being said, here's kind of the standard timelines of things. It could change. It depends on what the circumstances are, but here's all the contingencies. And Mr. Buyer, while other people are telling you how great it is and how smooth everything will be, there's some bumps and bruises, but I want to make sure that you know all the ways that we're able to cancel. So I'm showing you the contingencies on how you're protected, and I'm making it a forefront. So offer accept, and then I'm going through the whole thing. Offer accepted, initial deposits right after that, and we're going to do the home inspection. I'll be there as well as the licensed home inspector. We're going to show up, and he'll hopefully he's stinky and sweaty. He's been there for 3 or 4 hours, which is a good sign. That means that he knows everything there is to know about that property. He's going to debrief us. It's going to take about an hour, and he's going to let us know everything that he finds, both good and bad. We have an opportunity then to decide if you want to move forward. And this is where you're also creating an expectation too, because what I also tell them is there's no such thing as a clean bill of health on a property. So will there be things wrong with it? Absolutely. And the number of things and the severity of things that are wrong with it should be consistent with the age of the property. So a property that's new construction, that's just built last week, will there be things wrong with it? Yeah, but it's minor. It's like they forgot caulking on one of the tile pieces. Maybe they forgot a filler from the conduit outside from the AC. It's minor kind of things. But a home that's 50 years old, oh yeah, there's going to be, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't purchase it. It just means that that's the cost of ownership, but we want to be aware of what that is. So when you, Mr. Buyer, close on the property, you're going to have a honey-do list. You're going to have a list of things of, weekend projects for the next 6 months or so of what you need to focus on. And then we can kind of put them more in order of severity. But if there's safety issues or big issues that are unexpected, if there's a foundation crack, roof is about to cave in, just know that we have the opportunity to terminate. So that's the expectation part that I'm building in that conversation. When I say it like that, and I word it like that, what I never have in dealing with clients is I don't have the people going, you know what, ask them for a $30,000 credit. Because I've already explained to them what the market is and it's a seller's market. We have a home inspection for a reason. There's no clean bill of health. I'm going through these things on purpose because if you don't do that, you're going to you're setting yourself up for an issue. And that's part of that client management thing. Does that help, Rosa?
No. So,
No. Okay.
So what I'm getting at is, okay, when it comes to these contingencies, well, the initial deposit, we'll touch on that later because you said something, but my focus here is the contingencies. So the home inspection and the termite report, those where I come from, and there's inspection contingency, loan contingency, appraisal contingency, basic 3 contingencies. The inspection contingency has home and title in one. That means that the buyer has the right to use this contingency to go and get their own inspections and then decide if they want to continue to move forward. Mm-hmm. And so it looks like here, these are separate.
Yeah, they're separate.
They're different. They're different contingencies. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so basically the way it goes is like, there's like a 3 to 7 day home inspection contingency. Once you get through that, you sign that off. and then you move on. Next step would be like the loan contingency. Is the loan in good standing? Can they move forward? And it usually ties in with the appraisal contingency. A lot of times if the property doesn't appraise for the purchase price that the buyer is offering, that can disrupt the loan, because the lender could say, hey, this property isn't worth what you think it's worth. Are you willing to pay the difference that you say you're going to pay? And then you negotiate and you move forward. Let's just say, I'm just kind of going in rapid fire here. And then you basically get through your contingencies, and then it's like, okay, let's go. Let's close this baby. And then you go through the process of closing. Having said that, these are all different contingencies. Are these in order of how they go?
Generally, yes.
Kind of like what
there might be the answer is generally yes. It might be nuance flip-flop, but it's not, when I say flip-flop, like you might get HOA document. If they already have, I'll give you this example. I'll order a survey on a listing right up front. So I already have, and then also association documents. So if you open a escrow with me on the list side, more than likely, I'm like, here's a seller disclosure, here's association documents, here's a survey day one. So that's out of order now. But it's not disruptive to you in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't cause that's actually better, not worse. But generally speaking, that is absolutely the first thing that will likely happen is a home inspection. Got it.
And so is there any way that you can do the home and pest inspection in the same visit?
You can do anything because everything is negotiable. However, it's not common. And the reason why it's not common is traditionally here in our market, the seller pays for the termite inspection. The seller is typically not wanting to pay for the termite inspection. First of all, they need the termite inspection for the lender. They're not going to want to pay for it until you've gotten past some of the earlier parts of the contingencies, especially the home inspection.
Why would you not want to front load with the termite inspection?
You mean like have the seller pay for it up front?
Yeah, just have it done. And since it's got to be done anyway, just have the seller do it right before you put the property on the market.
The reason is, that's a great question. So for all you new agents, the reason why that's not done here is because the buyer gets to choose who the inspector is. So you can't front load it if otherwise, I mean, you can say ABC pest inspection, but if the buyer goes, I don't want you picking your termite guy, I want to pick my termite guy who I trust to give me the real information about termites. That's number one. Number two is the cost of paradise is we're in a tropical climate. Termites are absolutely destructive. They can move in and destroy homes within a month. So if you had the forethought or the foresight, like how you're saying, Roseanne said, hey, I'm going to list this property and I'm going to do everything up front to just make it super simple. I'm going to get the survey done. I'm going to get termite done. I'm going to get the title report ordered, the documents, seller just like, I'm going to just try to front load as much as this is possible. If you did that, had the termite done and then listed on the market, then went into escrow and then basically delivered that termite report 60 days later, because that's kind of the time frame that would lead up to that. It's already outdated. It's outdated because there's more damage that could have occurred at that time, especially if it's an older home.
Okay, so here's a question to go into that. How about the other documents involved that isn't I get the termite report, makes total sense to me. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for letting me know that. But how about everything else, including the home inspection? Could you bring your own inspector out to do a home inspection?
You as in the seller?
Yes.
Yeah. So the answer is yes, but same as the termite is the buyer has a right to choose their own inspector. So do I recommend a pre-listing inspection? I absolutely recommend that. In fact, it says it. It says it on some of our documents as well, but it all comes down to cost, right? So when you're realizing that when you're sitting in front of a seller and you say, hey, I'm so much better than other real estate agents out there, and you really should list with me because I'm super detailed. By the way, I'm gonna charge you about $2,500 in costs up front versus and they're going to say, yeah, but I called this other realtor and he said I got it. That's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with market norm versus common sense. So I agree.
True.
I agree.
True, but here's something to add.
That's a list side conversation, not the buy side conversation
True.
though.
I know. And I'm getting into the list side. One more thing before I won't talk list anymore.
It's okay.
What if, because a lot of times the agent pays for staging, and we're in a world of staging there a lot of homes here don't get staged, right? What if instead of like what you would normally do when you would normally pay for staging, you go ahead and pay for the home inspection as the agent? Is that something that you recommend?
It's not whether it's recommended or not. I think it's what the other side, there's a lot of parties involved to try to move a scenario. So let me just give you this example. When the market started to switch, this is before the pandemic. So before it got real bananas here, I want to say fourth quarter 2018 is when the market started to shift and started to slow down a little bit. Okay. We were entering a shift. And what a shift means for you new agents, it doesn't mean the sky is falling. It just means that the days on market are getting a little bit extended out, that the sales price to list price ratio was softening a little bit. And here, as robust as our market typically is, it would take, 3 times, 4 times as long to sell. And we're not getting, 10 offers all competing with one another. We might get 1 or might get 2 at the same time, that kind of thing. When the market started to shift, I came up with this program in California during the mortgage meltdown, and I brought it back here and used it a few times. And it's market driven. So you use it at a certain time. And in a shifting market, when it's shifting out of a seller's market into a neutral market, or it's a buyer's market, how do you have your listing stand out? Well, what I would do is I would have, you guys ever heard of a certified used car, right? A certified used car is far better than buying just a used car, because they do all the checks and they got all the warranties, and we've done this, and this. You're buying with confidence. I took that same concept and I applied it here, which is a certified home. So I have a big sign that goes on top. It's a rider that goes on top of the sign. It says certified home. It's my sign. Underneath that sign, it says appraisal done, survey done, condo docs done, pre-listing inspection done, and also home warranty done. So I have all these things. So when people walk in, why would they want to buy the guy across the street when they got to start from scratch? When they walk in here, they already know what the value is. They already know what's wrong with it. So to answer your question, was that that's market driven. So there's no way possible you're going to convince sellers or agents to do all of that work. And right now, if I put a home for sale, if it's priced even remotely correctly, in the ballpark correctly, I'm going to get multiple offers. The market's too hot. So too hot a market like that will create bad habits, unfortunately. So I agree with you.
I understand.
You can do it for sure. I recommend it, but the buyer can still go, hey, great. Thank you for giving me this pre-listing inspection, but I'm going to do my own inspection with my own inspector, kind of thing. And that's typically what will happen.
Okay. Yeah. And I understand that that's the buyer's right. And I always let my buyers know that this inspection is your right. You can either decide to do it or not.
Yeah.
In the market where I come from, then I say this because the next thing I say is, well, in this market, a lot of, if there is an inspection contingency on your offer, more than likely that offer is going to be set aside and not accepted.
Yeah.
Because so that's where I was coming from. Now I understand here it's very important to have that, and it is the buyer's, I guess in a sense, the buyer's responsibility to have this done if they want to know exactly what they're buying. Correct?
Yeah, I don't recommend personally. The home inspection is to me the most important contingency, because
agreed.
And some markets, for a variety of different reasons, they may waive it or what have you. And you may have situations. I think Hiroko, she works with Kina. Kina does a lot of investors, and investors are flipping it anyways. And some of them are very savvy and very experienced in flipping, and they could care less about that. That's okay. So that's the demographic that she's working with, and that's fine. But as a person who's going to occupy, who is on their first, second, maybe even third home, should not be waiving the inspection. There's way too many things that can go wrong. And we can get sued, so we want to make sure that we advise.
Yeah. So also, the inspection's already provided in California too. So that's why,
that's a nuance.
It's provided by the seller. So
that's a total nuance difference.
Yeah. So then my next question is to move on with all the contingencies. So is it common for a home to be listed without a title report or a seller's disclosure?
Yeah, unfortunately, the answer is it common? Yes. Then I go back to the bad habits of inexperienced agents or just lazy agents or whatever it is. For us meaning KW agents, if you're listing a home, you got to order the prelim. You got to order the prelim, and you already got to start the SRPDS, because what if you see the SRPDS and there's something detrimental on there or something that poses additional questions? Why would you deal with that while in escrow or while it's on the market? You can deal with that prior to even going live. So we try to teach good habits, but other firms don't have classes like we have, so a lot of times they're just, I can't tell you how many times it's not a rule, it's not a code, it's not a standard or a law. So there's been many times that I've reached out to another agent and found out that they don't have anything. In fact, but here's another one that blows your mind is I've reached out to agents who didn't even have a listing agreement signed, but yet it was already on the MLS. Yeah. So people take so many shortcuts, and I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, you can't operate like that. We're licensed individuals, so we have to do things in a certain order, in a certain process.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, so hold on. They said that they resent it to me. You know what I think is happening, Stephanie? I think it's going to my other email. Hold on. Yeah, it's my personal email. You guys are sending it to. And then, lastly, what I'm going to say as I am trying to open this up here is the other thing that I often will do in the buyer consultation is institute something called a promise. And what the promise is you've heard of this, right, Rosa? Is when you are giving them the standards that you're going to uphold for them, but you're also kind of peppering in, hey, I'm going to work super hard for you, and I'm going to do everything that I possibly can. And while we're in this process of looking for a home and going through escrow and all this other kind of stuff, that we're going to be working together for the next 60 days at minimum, maybe even 90 days. And I'm very fortunate and blessed to get most of my clients from referral and repeat clients and so forth. So while you're going through this process, you're going to be hearing from people at work and friends and family and so forth that also might be interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate. I would greatly appreciate if you would keep me top of mind and let me reach out to them. And I promise that I will provide them with the same level of service that I'm giving to you. So you say this, it's called the promise. And you bring that up again on some of the high notes. The high notes is we had a home inspection done, and the home inspection was good, no issues that are major. And you're like, oh my gosh, hey, congratulations, we got through a huge milestone. Just wanted to remind you, let me know if there's anything, if you know anyone that wants to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. So you're kind of training them to do this. You're also going to mention too that by the time we're done with the process, I hand you your keys, but I can send you a link to the person who invented the promise. His name is Mike Hicks. He's absolutely amazing. But what he says is he'll go on to say, if at that time we close and you didn't give me any referrals, I absolutely know that's going to be me. I must have failed you in some way. So I would love to find out where I might have let you down. I mean, talk about a great psychology, because you're basically, you're not saying it's you. You're saying, hey, it must be me. If I didn't earn your confidence to give me a referral, then I'm going to ask what it is that I could have done better. So, and make sure that you institute the promise in that too. Chloe, did you have a question?
Hey, yeah, I did. I think Sam asked this in the chat, but how do you and when do you speak to your clients about signing a buyer's rep in this process?
So I always, for me personally, I bring it up in the first, I might be a little different, but I bring it up in the first buyer consultation. I bring it up. I don't force them to sell it. I'm not that guy. I'm not, as you can probably tell, I'm not salesy. I'm very educational. So I do bring it up. I explain what it is. I explain that what their rights are, what the standards that I have to do for them, and what the requirements are. And I put it in front of them and say, take a look at it. Let me know what your thoughts are. And if we start looking at property, I'll bring it up again for me personally, if I'm looking at the third property, they haven't signed it, I'm not moving forward unless they sign it. That's just me.
Yeah.
You have to pick what style works for you. However, I will absolutely tell you, don't disregard it as though it's I've never held a client to it, meaning like I've never gone to court saying, hey, you signed a buyer's rep, so therefore I've never done that. I would never do that. It's it's purely psychological. You're saying, hey, I'm committed to you. I want you to be committed to me as well. Because if they're not going to take the time to sign that thing, there's another issue. So that opens up a question that you might be able to immediately answer for them, or maybe a value that they're not seeing in you. And it could be resolved. They could say, well, this other agent sends me things automatically all the time on all these homes. Like, oh, I can do that for you too. That's great. Thank you for pointing it out. But I do that as well. Like whatever that is,
Right.
you want to know what their concern is so you can address it. So I bring it up on the first, in the initial buyer consultation. I will not show them more than 3 homes without them signing it.
Okay.
And can I add to that?
Yeah, please.
A common question that I ask, that question I ask before I even get into anything with a potential buyer is, have you signed on with another real estate agent?
Oh yeah, that's
Because
a no-brainer.
if they have signed something, that means you are not allowed to talk to them anymore, advise them anymore. So having said that, if it's my client, I want to make sure that they have signed on, so they'll remember when they get asked that question, have you signed on with anybody? They're like, oh yeah, Rosa had me sign that piece of paper. Then they'll say yes. And you won't have other agents trying to poach your clients.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we never want to steal other people's clients, just like we wouldn't want to have them steal ours. The moment that they say that they're working with someone, ask a few more questions to dig, because some people go, oh, I'm working with an agent, and they may know an agent but have never met with them, signed with them, shown proper. I mean, so just dig a little bit deeper. If you have questions on that, you can ask one of your brokers, you can ask me. Jesse asked the question, if a buyer wants to skip an inspection, we kind of touched on that. Do they need to sign a form? Yeah, they have to sign a waiver. But again, it's our job to educate them. We don't want them to just rush to the conclusion of skipping an inspection just to get an offer accepted. We need to understand why. So if they're to the point of Hiroko, if they are savvy flippers and experienced flippers, understandable. But if they're, on their second home or first home, probably not a smart idea. So we just want to find out why. Is it because you're trying to get an offer accepted? Because there's other ways that we can present it like that. Like for instance, one of the clauses that I've written, I write a lot of clauses that you guys will find in zip forms, some of which are good, so good that they're being used by other agents, other firms outside, because I see my same clauses and my wordings coming back to us on our listings, which is, buyer understands that property is being sold as is and agrees not to ask for any credits or repairs as a result of the findings in J1. So that is basically saying, I still want to do a J1 because I want to have my rights to cancel, but I'm not going to ask for any credits or repairs. That's what the seller is mainly concerned with. They just don't want you to ask for credits or repairs. So you can still accomplish that and educate them to say, hey, let's not waive your right to do that. Let's just tell them that we're not going to be asking them for credits or repairs. So it still accomplishes it, but you want to kind of word it in such a way that still have that protection. Let's see, any other? Okay, so let me just share this with you before I let you guys go. This is my client packet that I used to use. Here's the beauty of it. This is before I put this together, way before Command even came out. It doesn't matter what you put on there. You can put whatever it is that you want. It can now. I wish that I had Command, because with Command you can use the designs applet and completely create your own. I highly recommend that you do that. And I would put in here some notes and what my lender partners were. I dealt a lot with people relocating and in VA. So I have like fun facts, and I'm trying to, there's a purpose. I'm keeping it colorful so that I can keep them focused on what I'm talking to them about. I tell them about my code of ethics, a buyer advisory, which is, I go through all this stuff, the seller disclosure and the appraisal and title reports and so forth. The other reason why this is important is because it keeps you on track. So if some of you guys are social people, which probably all of you are if you're in this industry, and you like to talk, you can end up not even having a buyer consultation and just talking story with them and like, oh, what school did you go to? Oh my gosh, what did you major in? That's amazing. Oh, you know such and such. That's amazing. I know such and such. The whole point is to go over things to get value so they understand your value. So this is real simple, but it's colorful on purpose. I got to take this out now. See, Zillow is now is now a brokerage. But it's all this kind of stuff, and then you can put testimonials in there and all kinds of stuff. So the purpose of it doesn't matter what it is, but use something. But that what it's intended for me is when I have it in front of them upside down or on Zoom, it's keeping me on track. So they can ask questions and I go right back to where I left off. I'm kind of going next section. I'm going in that order. Okay, so I will give you a copy of, I'm going to find you The Promise by Mike Hicks so that you can hear what that script sounds like. I'm going to email you a copy of what we discussed, and some tips and tricks in the order and on all that kind of stuff. I'm going to send you a copy of my buyer consultation, and I'm going to send you a copy of that roadmap as well. Does any of you guys have any questions that I can answer for you?
I do.
Yeah.
Me again. The buyer advisory. I know that you said that we can create our own listing or buyer presentation. The buyer advisory, is that something that you wrote yourself, or is that something that we can find in command and add it? Or
I wrote it myself, so you're welcome to copy anything in there because I created it from scratch. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Copy all you want. Just don't say your name is Chad. I don't know how well that's not going to get you very far.
Promise I won't.
Any other questions? No? All right, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me this morning. And the pleasure and opportunity is all mine in terms of being able to pour into you guys. I hope that you guys got something out of it. And I will shoot you guys all an email containing this information. If there's anything that you need from me one-on-one, feel free to call, text, or email me. But otherwise, I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Take
You're the
care.
best. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.